The signal fire of Intel's comeback has been lit. That is probably how the wider world will read this piece of news. But my own take is almost the opposite. To me, this is a quiet yet weighty sign that Intel has finally finished transforming, from an Intel that tries to keep everything into an Intel that concentrates its money on the factories it can actually win with. More than any flashy plan for a brand new fab, it is this rather unglamorous €5 billion decision that I think speaks most honestly about how serious Intel has become right now.
Hello everyone, I'm Ty, with 31 years in the semiconductor industry. In this video, I'll walk you through the news that Intel is investing €5 billion into its existing plant in Ireland. By the time you finish watching, you'll understand not only what is actually inside this investment, but also why Intel chose a 37-year-old veteran site instead of a shiny new factory, and how this April's buyback of a stake connects to the investment we are seeing now, right down to the management judgment behind the scenes. So, let's get into it.
In a certain region, there was a long-established chain of family restaurants that had been around since its founding many decades ago. At one time, it was riding high, and it had grandly announced plans to open new branches all across the country, and even overseas. Over the past few years, though, the weather began to turn. The reputation of its signature dishes was being pushed aside by rival restaurants, and far from opening more locations, the company found itself cornered into a situation where rebuilding the business simply had to come first.
The management team started by taking the knife to its plans for new stores. The large overseas openings it had trumpeted so loudly were called off, and even a plan for which it had already begun securing the land was scrapped entirely. People around them muttered, "Where did all that swagger go?" But if they had kept every single plan alive, each store would have received only half-hearted funding, and they could all have gone down together. Once you look at the real state of things, it is an entirely natural call. On the other hand, this chain had one flagship restaurant that had been thriving for 37 years. Staffed with skilled craftsmen and blessed with loyal regulars, it was the backbone of the whole operation. However, during a stretch a few years earlier when cash was tight, the company had handed nearly half of that restaurant's ownership to an outside co-owner in exchange for renovation money. So no matter how well the place did, nearly half of the profits kept flowing out to someone else. So the management moved without getting the order of things wrong. First, this past spring, they bought back the co-owner's stake all in one go, restoring the arrangement in which 100% of the flagship's profits came to them. It was not a cheap purchase by any means. But if you are about to beef up a store, it makes no sense to pour in a fortune while the fruit keeps flowing off to someone else. First, fix the vessel, then fill it. That was the thinking. And a few months later, the management made an announcement. We will carry out a major renovation of this flagship's kitchen, expand the cooking area, and bring in the very latest equipment. Rather than building a store in some new town, they would concentrate their money on the location that already had the craftsmen, the regulars, and 37 years of hard-won know-how. From here, let me explain concretely how this simplified story actually plays out on a real industrial stage. The real stage is not a small-town diner, but a massive semiconductor plant. On July 13, 2026, Intel announced that it would invest €5 billion, roughly $5.7 billion, into its site in Leixlip, Ireland. Leixlip is a small town of about 17,000 people, but ever since Intel first arrived there back in 1989, the company has poured in a cumulative total of more than €30 billion, growing it into Europe's flagship manufacturing site, where around 4,900 people now work. What is inside this investment is not the building of a brand new factory block from scratch. The focus is on renovating existing facilities and bringing in advanced equipment, expanding the automated transport system that links the several buildings together so that the whole site can be run as one integrated production environment. Strengthening an existing plant, rather than building a new one, ramps up faster and offers higher investment efficiency, and that is its defining feature. What is being strengthened is the production capacity for an advanced process called Intel 3. This site manufactures the server CPUs Xeon 6 and the next generation Xeon, and the plan is to meet rising demand from AI data centers. Research and development functions are said to be reinforced as well, so this is not merely about producing more, it is an investment that raises the very standing of the site by a notch. At the same time, Intel has already canceled the new factory it had planned in Germany. This Ireland investment is the flip side of that decision. Instead of building something new, the company is redirecting its money to a site where the infrastructure is already in place, prioritizing investment efficiency and speed of ramp-up. A European strategy of exactly that shape is coming into view. Now, here is where we dig into the real heart of the matter. Media coverage tends to fixate on the sheer size of the number, a huge €5 billion investment in Europe. But what caught my attention was where and in what order Intel invested. Look closely at those two things, and the management thinking behind today's Intel starts to show through. First, the matter of order. This April, Intel bought back the 49% stake in the joint venture that operates its flagship Fab 34, a stake it had earlier handed to the investment firm Apollo, for about $14.2 billion. And then, roughly 3 months later, it announced this €5 billion expansion investment. Just as in the analogy, Intel first put in place a structure where 100% of the profits from higher output returned to itself, and only then did it execute the investment to raise that output. I do not see this order as a coincidence. Sell a stake during the hard times to raise cash, buy it back once the outlook clears, and then invest in a concentrated way. Because this shows that Intel's moves over the past few years, moves that looked improvised and haphazard from the outside, were in fact proceeding, at least on the financial side, according to a coherent and well-reasoned sequence. Next, the where. While Intel has scrapped its large factory plans in Germany and Poland, it is continuing to invest in Arizona, New Mexico, and Ireland. This €5 billion amounts to roughly 30% of the company's total annual capital spending, and all of it is being poured into a single site. This is management deciding, in the truest sense of the phrase, to concentrate its money on the sites it can win with. So, what is this expansion actually for? One view is that it is about winning external customers for Intel Foundry. But in my own read, the bigger meaning lies in supporting Intel's own Xeon business and the utilization rate of Intel 3. For a factory, the utilization rate is everything. From my own years on the floor, I have felt it keenly. No matter how magnificent a plant may be, if it does not fill up, it is nothing more than a gigantic pile of cost. Of course, there are walls to climb. The biggest wall is on the demand side. That is, whether Xeon can keep the factory full amid the fierce competition in server CPUs. Concentrated investment, when it lands, is recovered efficiently, but when it misses, the damage is concentrated in one spot as well. That Intel went ahead anyway is, the way I take it, a sign that the company is regaining a certain confidence in the competitiveness of its own products. And this is not a new gamble. Lexlip holds 37 years of accumulated talent, equipment, and mass production know-how, and this decision is about layering more money onto that solid foundation. Rather than a signal fire of comeback, I see this news as a symbolic case, showing that Intel has, at long last, finished getting ready to invest in a truly concentrated way. Let's also think about the impact on Japan. An investment centered on renovating existing plants and bringing in equipment is, from the standpoint of those who supply that equipment and those materials, a solid business opportunity. Japan has many companies with real strength in manufacturing equipment and materials, and if this kind of expansion investment into existing sites keeps happening around the world, I see a structure in which Japan stands to benefit rather easily. There is also a chance that this investment pattern, strengthen the existing rather than build the new, spreads to one country after another. Let me sum up. Intel is pouring €5 billion into its Leixlip site in Ireland to strengthen the production capacity of Intel 3. Just before that, it finished buying back its stake in the joint venture, and only after putting in place a structure where 100% of the profits returned to itself did it make this concentrated investment.
From an Intel that keeps everything to an Intel that concentrates its money on the factories it can win with. It is in the quiet, concentrated investment, I believe, that a company's true seriousness reveals itself.
That's all for today. I'll keep bringing you semiconductor news and analysis, so if you found this useful, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. This has been Ty on Semiconductor News Decoded.